You've seen the photos by now. We all have. Ben Affleck standing outside that coffee shop in Santa Monica, looking like he hasn't slept in a week, shaking his head at a paparazzo who dared to ask him how he was holding up. But it's not the image that's haunting everyone today, it's what he said. For the first time since the news broke out of Brentwood, someone from the inner circle, someone who actually sat at the dinner table with Rob and Michelle, has stopped saying the usual PR stuff and actually told the truth. And let me tell you, it is not what anyone expected. It's not the usual thoughts and prayers line. It's not the "we are devastated" press release. It is raw. It is ugly. And it is the first crack in the dam that is about to burst wide open about what really happened between Nick Reiner and his parents. When you look at Ben in that footage, you aren't seeing a movie star. You're seeing a man who sees himself in the tragedy. Remember, Ben isn't just watching from the outside. He's a guy who has fought his own demons, his own addictions, publicly and painfully. He knows what it looks like when a family tries to save someone who doesn't want to be saved. And when he muttered those words, and we're going to get to the exact quote in a second because you need to understand the context, he wasn't just talking about Rob, he was talking about the guilt of the entire industry. It's interesting, isn't it, how quiet the A-list has been. Usually when a legend like Rob Reiner passes, even if it were natural causes, the tributes come right away. Instagram posts, tweets, long statements. But this time it's been radio silence, a scared silence. And Ben is the one breaking it because he can't keep it inside anymore. Sources close to Affleck say he's been pacing his house since the news hit CNN, completely unable to process that the man who championed Good Will Hunting, the man who helped put him and Matt on the map, is gone in such a violent, senseless way. But it's more than that, it's the how. We need to talk about the Tom Cruise element here too. Because while Ben is falling apart, Tom is apparently on a warpath. These are the two reactions tearing Hollywood apart right now, the heartbreak and the rage. You have to remember Rob Reiner directed Tom in A Few Good Men. They spent months together. Tom knows the family, he knows the dynamic. And while Ben is out here expressing this deep sorrow, insiders are leaking that Cruise is furious, not just at Nick, but at the enablers, the people who knew things were spiraling in that Brentwood home and did nothing. But let's go back to Ben because his statement this morning changes the whole story. He didn't just mourn Rob, he pointed fingers at the system. He looked right at the camera, eyes completely bloodshot, and said, "We loved them to death." We literally loved them to death. We thought keeping it quiet was protecting them, but we were just loading the gun. Think about that. We thought keeping it quiet was protecting them. That is a confession. That is Ben Affleck admitting that the circle around the Reiners knew. They knew about the fights. They knew about the aggression. They knew that Nick wasn't just struggling in the way that PR firms like to spin it. He was dangerous, and they stayed silent out of respect for Rob, out of respect for the family image. And now 2 people are dead. Ben's reaction is so strong because he knows the 2 sides of Rob Reiner better than anyone. To the public, Rob was the lovable meathead from All in the Family or the genius director of The Princess Bride, a soft, liberal, gentle soul. But Ben knew the father. Ben spent time in that house. He saw the way Rob looked at Nick, that desperate, pleading look of a father who would do anything, pay anything, forgive anything just to get his son back. And Ben, being a father himself and being an addict himself, is standing at the intersection of those 2 nightmares. The reason this isn't just another celebrity tragedy is the specific nature of the betrayal. We are hearing reports now, things that Ben hinted at, that this wasn't a sudden snap. This wasn't a one-off bad night. This was a siege that lasted for years. We're talking about a pattern of behavior that was systematically covered up by parents who loved their son too much to let him fail, and by an industry that loves its legends too much to let them be embarrassed. What's shocking people isn't just the crime, it's the cover-up. Not a legal cover-up, but an emotional one. Ben's breakdown confirms what whispers have suggested for years, that the Reiner household was a fortress of secrets. You have to wonder when Ben says "we knew," who is we? Is it Matt? Is it the Castle Rock executives? Is it the friends who went to the dinner parties and looked away when Nick screamed at his mother? There is a rumor circulating, and it fits perfectly with what Affleck is hinting at, that there was an incident 3 years ago. A holiday party. Tom Cruise was there. Ben was there. And apparently Nick made a scene that would have ended anyone else's social standing in Hollywood instantly. But because it was Rob's son, And because Rob, sweet, gentle Rob, stepped in and apologized for him, everyone let it slide. They went back to their drinks. They went back to their networking. They normalized the abuse because they respected the victim. And that is what is eating Ben Affleck alive right now. You can see it in his posture. He's realized that by respecting Rob's privacy, they allowed the PR, sure cooker, to explode. If someone had called the police 3 years ago, if someone had stepped in and said, Rob, you can't live like this, maybe we aren't having this conversation today. Maybe Michelle is still here. This connects to the facts coming from the Cruz camp. Tom, who is known for his intense discipline and structure, reportedly tried to intervene in the past. There's chatter that Cruz had to sit down with Rob man to man, telling him that love wasn't enough, that he needed to cut the cord for his own safety. And Rob, in his infinite kindness, refused. He refused to give up on his boy. It's the classic tragedy of a good man's greatest virtue becoming his fatal flaw. Rob Reiner's heart was too big for his own good. Now, why is Ben speaking out now? Why today? Because the narrative is starting to shift. The defense lawyers are already spinning their story for the trial in January. They're going to paint Nick as a victim of circumstance, of pressure, of mental illness, and Ben Affleck, bless him, isn't having it. He's seeing the machinery start to work to excuse the inexcusable, and he's stepping in front of the train by saying, we ignored the signs. He is effectively testifying before he even steps into a courtroom. He is saying, this was not an accident, this was an escalation. It's rare to see a Hollywood heavyweight be this vulnerable. Usually they hide behind publicists. But Ben has no filter right now. He's grieving the loss of a second father figure. Remember, Hollywood is a shark tank. Genuine mentors are rare. Rob Reiner was one of the few who actually cared about the craft and the people, not just the box office. When Ben was young, stupid, and making mistakes, Rob didn't judge him. He guided him. And to see that guide, that moral compass, be destroyed by the very person he was trying to save, it breaks your brain. There's a layer here that people are missing about the Brentwood house. It's being described in the news as a crime scene, but for people like Ben, it was a sanctuary. That house was where the deals were made, where the scripts were read, but also where the family dinners happened. To think of that specific living room, a room full of memorabilia, warmth, laughter, turning into a scene of such horror is physically sickening to these people. That's why Ben looks like he's going to be sick. He's been in that room. He knows the geography of the tragedy. He knows exactly where Michelle would have been standing. And let's be honest about the industry's complicity. We love the troubled genius trope. We love the rebellious son narrative. We romanticize dysfunction until it bleeds. Ben knows this better than anyone. He's been the troubled genius. He's been the tabloid fixture. And he sees in Nick a reflection of the worst-case scenario. It's almost a survivor's guilt. Ben got out. Ben got help. Ben has his family. Nick went the other way, and the cost was Rob and Michelle. Tom Cruise's perspective offers a different kind of truth. While Ben is focused on the emotional failure, Cruise is focused on the procedural failure. How is Nick allowed back in the house? Who signed off on that? There are reports that Nick had been in and out of rehab facilities that cost more than most people make in a decade. The best doctors, the best therapists, and yet here we are. It forces us to ask the uncomfortable question. Can you save someone who is determined to destroy everything? Rob thought the answer was yes. The reality was no. The timing of this is also brutal. We are heading into awards season. Rob was supposed to be receiving Lifetime Achievement accolades. The tributes were already being cut, and now those montages have to be re-edited from celebration to memorial. Ben was likely one of the people tapped to present those awards. Imagine the weight of that. Preparing a speech to honor a man's life and then having to give a eulogy for his murder. I have to listen closely to what wasn't said, too. Ben didn't ask for privacy for Nick. He asked for privacy for the siblings, for Jake and Romy. That distinction matters. He is drawing a line in the sand. He is severing Nick from the protection of the Reiner family. In Hollywood, that is the ultimate excommunication. When Ben Affleck, a man known for forgiveness and second chances, cuts you out, you are gone. We are also hearing that the DA is looking at the communications between the family and the weeks leading up to the 14th. And this is where the secrets Ben alluded to might come out legally. Texts, voicemails, the things that Rob and Michelle kept on their phones, hidden from the world. If Ben knows what's in those messages, it explains his devastation. It implies that Rob knew he was in danger. That's the most heartbreaking part of the theory, that Rob Reiner, the optimist, the man who believed in happy endings, might have spent his final days knowing his own son was a threat and still opened the door. That is the Shakespearean tragedy of it. And Ben, being a writer, being a storyteller, can't process it. It defies the logic of a screenplay. In a movie, the father's love saves the son. In a movie, the intervention works. In reality, the love is the weapon the son used to get close enough to strike. People are asking if this will change how Hollywood handles its Nepo babies, its troubled heirs. Probably not. But for this specific circle, for Ben, for Matt, for Tom, for Billy Crystal, this is a permanent scar. You will never see Ben Affleck look at a troubled kid story the same way again. There's a moment in the video of Ben where he almost collapses. Similar to how Aaron Sorkin was described, it's that physical buckle of the knees. It's the realization that money, fame, legacy, Oscars, none of it protected Rob. Rob Reiner had everything a human being could want on PP. Apron, he died in terror in his own home. That destroys the illusion of safety that celebrities live in. Ben isn't just grieving Rob, he's grieving the idea that success keeps you safe. And let's look at the Tom Cruise facts that are surfacing on the periphery. Cruise is reportedly pushing for the full timeline to be released. He wants the world to know how many chances Nick was given. Why? Because Cruise believes in accountability. He doesn't want the media to spin this as society failed Nick. He wants the narrative to be clear. Nick made a choice. It's a harsh stance, but it's the stance of a man who is tired of seeing good people destroyed by chaos. It's the counterweight to Ben's sorrow. Ben is asking why. Tom is asking how. The trial on January 7th is going to be a circus, but the real trial is happening right now in the court of public opinion led by these reactions. When the judge asks for character witnesses, who shows up? Does Ben stand there and talk about Rob's love? Or does he stand there and talk about Nick's rage? The fact that we even have to ask that question shows how messy this is. I keep going back to that quote. We love them to death. It's going to be the epitaph of this entire saga. It implies a collective failure. It implies that the entire village that raised Nick Reiner failed to see the wolf he was becoming, or worse, saw the wolf and tried to pet it. What's happening now is that the shock is wearing off and the anger is setting in. You can see it in Ben's eyes. He's moving from, I can't believe this happened, to, this shouldn't have happened. And that anger is going to be directed at the defense team. Wait until the defense tries to claim insanity. Watch Ben Affleck's reaction, then watch Hollywood's reaction. They know the difference between mental illness and malice, and they seem pretty convinced this was malice. There's also the Michelle factor. Everyone talks about Rob because he was the face, the director, the legend. But Ben was close to Michelle too. She was the matriarch. She was the one who kept the gate. For her to be taken out as well, it removes the possibility that this was a targeted grievance against a father figure. It makes it a slaughter. Ben mentioned her name with a crack in his voice that you can't fake. He mentioned her coffee, her hospitality, small details that make the loss real. You know, in A Few Good Men, there's that famous line about handling the truth. Right now, it feels like Ben Affleck is the only one handing us the truth. The truth that Rob Reiner wasn't just a director, he was a hostage in his own love for his son. The truth that Hollywood knew and did nothing. The truth that money can't cure madness. As we get closer to the funeral and then the trial, watch the body language of these stars. Watch who sits where. Watch who hugs whom. The lines are being drawn. On one side, the people who want to remember Rob the director. On the other, the people like Ben and Tom who are demanding justice for Rob the victim. It is a dark day in Los Angeles. The fog hasn't lifted, metaphorically speaking. And for Ben Affleck, a man who has lived 1,000 lives in the public eye, this seems to be the chapter he doesn't know how to close. He looked lost. And if Ben Affleck, a guy who has navigated scandals, divorces, and rehabs, looks lost, then we should all be worried about what is going to come out next. Because if the rumors are true, if the facts Tom Cruise is sitting on are real, then what we know so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The abuse didn't start that night. The terror didn't start that night. That night was just the end of a long, silent horror movie that Rob and Michelle were living in, while the rest of the world applauded their success. And Ben Affleck just walked out of the theater and told us the ending, and it is absolutely gut-wrenching. So don't scroll past the headlines today thinking it's just clickbait. When you see Ben's face, stop and look, really look. That is the face of a man realizing that sometimes love is the most dangerous thing in the world. And that is a lesson that has shaken Hollywood to its absolute core. We are waiting for the next shoe to drop. We are waiting for the January trial. But for now, we just have Ben standing on a sidewalk telling us that we all failed Rob Reiner. And he might be right. I want to pivot for a second to the legal strategy that's already leaking out because this ties into why Tom Cruise is so angry. We're hearing that Nick's defense is going to lean heavily on diminished capacity. They're going to drag Rob and Michelle's parenting into the spotlight. They're going to claim the pressure of being a Reiner broke him. And this is why Ben is speaking out now. He is preempting that narrative. He is telling the world, no, they were good parents. They were too good. He is trying to protect their legacy from being tarnished by the very person who took their lives. It's a defensive move. Ben knows how the media works. He knows that in a week the tabloids will start looking for dirt on Rob to explain why Nick snapped. Was he too controlling? Was he absent? Ben is shutting that down. He's planting the flag that says, Rob was a saint. It's a loyal friend move. It's a brother move. And think about the conversations happening in the mansions of Beverly Hills right now. Every famous parent with a troubled child is looking at this news and terrified. They're looking at their own kids, their own Nicks, and wondering if they are next. Rob Reiner was the gold standard of a dad. If it happened to him, it can happen to anyone. Ben knows this. He's looking at his own life, his own kids. The vulnerability is palpable. This tragedy has stripped away the glamour. There is no red carpet that covers this up. When Ben spoke, he didn't use big words. He didn't sound like a screenwriter. He stammered. He paused. Said, he looked at the ground. That lack of polish is what makes it so terrifyingly real. It was a human being processing inhuman cruelty. We also need to consider the ripple effect on the projects Rob left behind. There are documentaries, scripts, things halfway finished. Ben and others will likely step in to finish them, but it will never be the same. It's like when Kubrick died or when Philip Seymour Hoffman passed. There is a void, but this void is shaped like a crime scene. It's tainted. Can you watch The Princess Bride today without thinking about how the creator died? Ben can't. And he's telling us that he probably never will be able to again. The exclusive nature of what's coming out, the shouts heard by neighbors, the 911 call that hasn't been released yet, it's all pointing to a chaotic, terrifying final few minutes. And Ben's imagination, like all of ours, is filling in the blanks. That's the torture. Knowing enough to be horrified, but not enough to understand. And where is Nick in all this? Sitting in a cell, waiting for January 7th. Does he know that Ben Affleck is on TV condemning him? Does he know that Tom Cruise is rallying the industry against him? Or is he so far gone in his own delusion that he thinks he's the victim? The psychology of patricide, killing your father, is so rare, so ancient, so taboo that it breaks the brain to comprehend. Ben isn't a psychologist, but he's played enough characters to know that this is the darkest of all human actions. So when you see the clip circulating on TikTok or Twitter of Ben's interview, don't just listen to the soundbite. Watch his hands. Watch how he clenches them. That's the anger. That's the desire to punch a wall because he can't fix this. He can't rewrite the third act. The movie is over and the ending is a disaster. We are all waiting for January. But for the people who loved Rob, for Ben, for the CA, of friends who knew Michelle, for the Spinal Tap crew, the waiting is the hardest part. They have to sit with this grief through Christmas. Imagine that. Christmas at the Reiners was legendary, and now the house is taped off, the lights are off. It's a stark reminder that we don't know what happens behind closed doors. But Ben Affleck just opened the door a crack. And what he showed us is a nightmare that Hollywood will never recover from. The legend of Rob Reiner is now forever linked to the tragedy of Nick Reiner, and no amount of awards or box office hits can ever balance that scale. It is a tragedy of biblical proportions playing out on the streets of Los Angeles with our biggest stars watching in helpless horror. Keep your eyes on the news this week because if Ben is talking, others will follow. The dam has broken, the silence is over, and the truth about the Reiner family is about to come flooding out whether we're ready for it or not. 21.2s.